Resident Evil 7 is an interesting game. It came out in 2017 at the franchise's all-time low point, where the emphasis had drifted away from its survival horror roots to a more action-focused experience, where horror was more of a backdrop to the story and survival was basically non-existent. It didn't bode over well with fans, to say the least. Resident Evil 7 is the game that brought it all back: the horror-like atmosphere, the survival gameplay, the puzzles, everything. This was a make-or-break game after Resident Evil 6, and people liked it a lot, and we in large part need to thank Resident Evil 7 for games like the RE2 remake, RE3 remake, or RE4 remake even being made. Despite its return to form, it's not perfect, but still is a great game, and a masterclass in horror setup. It starts with the main protagonist Ethan receiving a message from his wife, who he hasn't seen in 3 years, giving him a mysterious address telling him to come get her. As you arrive at the location and go into this abandoned house, you can tell that something is not right. The atmosphere is fantastic here. You go through a secret hole in the wall, down the ladder, and the game presents you with its first jump scare. A perfect jump scare. No obnoxious loud sound or any cheap techniques to make you scared, just good old-fashioned horror. It's very reminiscent of the jump scare from Jaws, and a good sign for things to come. Ethan meets up with his wife, Mia, where she claims she didn't message him at all. They try to find a way out when she's suddenly kidnapped. He searches an upstairs corridor when all of a sudden there's this strange sound. Mia? It all of a sudden becomes this intense fight for survival as Mia starts attacking you with this knife. And I love how realistic this fight scene is. Ethan isn't a superhuman or anything, but someone is stabbing at you with a knife and you've got nothing to protect yourself with, you're gonna get messed up, and Ethan certainly does. Ethan barely survives this encounter and gets a phone call from someone called Zoe instructing him to go up to the attic if he wants to make it out alive. On his way there, he gets surprised by Mia, only 2 minutes after she just got axed off. This clearly shows that there is something deeper at work, making her like this. She cuts her hand off and then hobbles away. What next ensues is this really intense sequence in the attic with Mia, and she tries to kill you with a chainsaw, while you're barely reloading your gun with only one hand. It's like something out of a horror movie. She's breaking down walls. She can kill you really quickly if she gets close too, so it's a good idea to stay away. Really slow attack to kill. After that, you get surprised with a punch in the face from Jack Baker, and finally the game really begins. Now, this opening is great in a lot of ways. It sets the mood really well for what's to come, but that comes at a price. That price being repeat playthroughs. Every time you want to play a new game, you'll be forced to go through this long sequence, because for some reason you can't skip any of the cutscenes. You could be a good half an hour or more into the game before you really get to the proper gameplay. When I say proper gameplay, I mean like the Mia sequence. That isn't proper gameplay, you're just following her. You can't go past. This kills motivation to replay this game, and is sadly only one of its biggest issues. Moving on, Jack drags Ethan and Mia out of the abandoned house and into the Baker estate. This is where we meet the Baker family for the first time. Words can't really describe this family, so I'll just let the scene speak for itself.
Where am I? What the hell?
Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's time for supper.
Who are all you people? Where's Mia?
Eat it. It's good.
Dumb some bitch wasn't no good if it hit him.
Yes.
Get out the way, Marguerite. Hit boy's got to eat. He got to have his supper. Come here, boy. Let's do this.
Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit! He's not eating it, Jack! He's not eating it!
Shut the hell up, Marguerite!
I made that for him!
Get the hell out of here!
You're a son of a bitch! Oh, I can't believe it, you son of a bitch! He's not eating it! He's not eating it!
This was supposed to be a very special feast. Come on, boy.
God damn it! I'll bet it's that cop again.
Goddamn pigs! I'm coming back for you.
It's quite clear that Jack is the one calling the shots in this family, and he is the most persistent threat in the game. You escape from the chair and make your way down the hall when Jack pops out of nowhere.
Slip out before dinner was done?
This part is brilliant. The game throws you in an unfamiliar location with no way to defend yourself against a crazy guy trying to kill you. The trick is, you need to escape via the hatch, which is in the pantry. The key to the hatch is right here, so you have to face him. Even in subsequent playthroughs, this part never gets old. But it's not as simple as grabbing the key and putting it in the hatch. Well, it is if Jack isn't nearby. But if he is, and you try to put the key in, well...
House, boy!
Probably a better idea to just be patient and hide. If you escape successfully, you reach a typewriter, and yes, you can save here and just go back to this point if you want to play the game again, but you really shouldn't have to. And what if I want to change difficulty? Speaking of difficulty, you've got 3 in this game: easy, normal, and madhouse. Easy and normal are just fine, as in every game, just making the combat harder and nothing else. However, Madhouse changes item spawn locations, weapon spawn locations, and most notably, Jack, which I'll talk about later. This really allows it to stand out in the crowd, as you have to adopt a completely different playstyle for Madhouse compared to normal and easy. It just confuses me that there is no hardcore mode. It would have been a nice bridging gap between normal and Madhouse, because as is, the jump from normal to Madhouse is quite significant. Next, we have possibly the worst police dialogue I've ever heard.
You're not listening to me. There are crazy people in this house trying to fucking kill me.
Well, all right. Let me tell you this. You don't exactly seem like you playing with a full deck yourself.
He unsurprisingly dies like 2 minutes later. Next, we get the really awesome first boss fight with Jack. I know not everybody likes this fight, but I do. It's just really dumb and I enjoyed for that. 1 minute you're running over Jack in your car, the next moment he's jumped on the hood of the car trying to kill you. It's just crazy. And it just constantly keeps you guessing as to what's gonna happen next.
Do I have your attention, boy? You're about to see something wonderful. Oh, fuck!
The game really begins to open up as you reach the main hall. This is my favorite location in the whole game. It's very similar to Resident Evil 1's main hall, with 2 separate stairs leading to 2 different locations, but it's a much simpler design, which I don't actually think is necessarily a bad thing. Its design is very easy to get accustomed to, and really flows well. A lot of beloved features are back here, such as keys opening certain doors, weapons locked behind doors, and these really cool shadow puzzles, where you have to line up a silhouette of something with a picture. I really like the shotgun puzzle too. One may see the shotgun on the statue and grab it without thought and have the door locked behind you. Putting the shotgun back makes the door open back up, and the key to figuring out this puzzle isn't right beside you, so you'll just have to remember it's there for now. After collecting the wooden statuette from the bathtub, attempting to leave will trigger Jack's return.
Heck of a thing, ain't it? Sure shit beats the hell out of dying.
From here, Jack will roam freely around the house, and if he sees you, he will try to kill you. But he can't exactly go everywhere. Let's just say there are certain areas he can't go to. It's a bit complicated. So to explain simply how he works, this is a map of the main house from the perspective of where you get the shotgun. The safe rooms are labelled in green. You will never ever be attacked here at any point in the game by anyone. The left side of the house is the most dangerous, because that's where Jack has the most free range to go wherever he wants. The only area he can't go to on the left side of the map is the garage, but you will never really need to return here, and you do fight him at the start here, so I labelled it in blue. He has access to both floors on the left side, so you will most likely be caught if you're not really quick or really stealthy. He's also free to go wherever he wants in the main hall, however the right side of the map he can't even go near. This is most likely because there are other threats on the right side of the map that you will need to deal with, and adding Jack into the mix would make things really messy. To be honest, I've never found Jack to be a huge threat, especially on normal and easy mode. You can usually just run away, or if you really have to, you can shoot him, which will put him down for multiple minutes at a time. He's more of an obstacle really. The same can't be said for when you're in Madhouse. He is much more dangerous than that. He does not wait for you to go into the bathroom to surprise you. He just goes straight for you after the first boss fight. He also moves way faster, hits for a lot more health, and takes so many rounds to go down. And even if he does go down, it'll give you maybe 30 seconds of downtime and he'll be back on the hunt. It is brutal, but it begs the question once again as to why there is no hardcore difficulty as something in between. Because if you play the game on normal, it sometimes feels too easy. And when you play the game on Madhouse, sometimes it feels too hard, or just hard to relax and play. Hardcore has always fit that niche, and it's just strangely absent here. Don't get me wrong, I love Madhouse, but sometimes you just want a nice challenge, and you don't really get that with this game. And combined with its opening sections being really long, it just further decreases its replay value. Despite this, it's always really fun listening to all of Jack's goofy lines while he's chasing you, and you can tell the voice actor Jack Brand was having fun with the role.
Don't worry, I'm still here. It's over, boy. What's the matter, son? You out of ammo? Hello, man. God damn! How am I gonna replace this? You ain't getting away.
I really like the basement. It's on the right side of the map. They nail the vibe of this place, and this is where you'll be finding the other threats to deal with. These black, inky monsters, they're called the Molded, and they are very creepy. They have this really awkward movement as they trudge towards you. They're very unpredictable. Usually they'll just walk towards you, but if you shoot them, sometimes it will cause them to run towards you, or sometimes they'll randomly lunge at you. And they are very inconsistent in what kills them. Sometimes one shot is enough to take them down, sometimes it takes 2 shotgun rounds plus pistol bullets to finally kill them, and all this, it contributes to making them so unpredictable. These are much better than zombies in my opinion, and they work perfectly in these early sections of the game. Although, to be honest, if you're hitting headshots with a shotgun, it will absolutely annihilate them. You should have discovered the broken shotgun by now, beyond one of the scorpion key doors, and put that on the statue to get the real shotgun. Next, we get the second boss fight with Jack, and maybe I'm just weird, but I really like this one too. Sure, it's clunky and the tight FOV isn't doing it much favors, but how can some part of you not laugh at having a little chainsaw battle with Jack?
You look worried, boy.
If you expect a really well-constructed boss fight from this game, you're not gonna get it, but I mean, come on, how can you not laugh at this?
Groovy.
You escape the basement, and it feels almost relieving going back up to... Okay, well, you're finished with the Baker house for now, and finally escaping outside just feels so good. It feels really good to finally reach an open space, because for basically the entire game up till this point, you've been in tight, claustrophobic spaces, indoors, with very little wiggle room. And I think now is a good point to talk about the crafting system of Resident Evil 7. It's really good. Just like any Resident Evil game, you'll either be crafting healing or ammo. To make ammo, you need chem fluid plus gunpowder. To create healing, you need chem fluid plus a herb. And because both require chem fluid, it means you need to make an active decision on which you are going to craft. Sometimes you may want to use your chem fluid and gunpowder to make ammo, but maybe it's a smarter move to save your chem fluid in case you come across a herb which you can use to make healing. You need to use your brain to get the most out of this system, which is why it blows my mind that no Resident Evil game since has had this crafting system. And while I can't excuse the remakes for not having this, since they are remakes, and the original games obviously didn't have RE7's crafting system, there is no excuse for Resident Evil 8. In RE8, to make healing, you need chem fluid plus a herb, but to make ammo, you need metal scrap plus gunpowder. Each require entirely different ingredients, which means there's no overlapping elements, and thus no decision to be made. This is further trivialized by the fact that they stack in a separate tab to your inventory, so you can just grab them forever and it doesn't matter. You'll never run out of space. Adding to the list of forgotten game mechanics from Resident Evil 7 is videotapes. Every so often you may come across a videotape, and by putting them into the players scattered around the map, you get to play out the videotape. They usually give you a little insight into a location you're about to go to. I really like the one with Mia where you're trying to hide from Marguerite. She's just as scary as Jack, and it's really tense. Although I feel there was a missed opportunity to have the videotape end if you slip up and get caught. Instead it just gives you the option to retry, which is strange considering even if you do survive till the end of the tape, Mia gets captured anyway. Ethan gets a phone call from Zoe. She explains that neither her nor Mia can leave unless they're cured. The cure is in Marguerite's house. I think Marguerite's section is good. Although if you don't like bugs and creepy crawlies, that kind of thing, you're really going to hate this. They're so disgusting. Right up until around the point you get the flamethrower, which will absolutely destroy them. But outside of bugs, it's actually really bad. Definitely the worst weapon in the game. Ethan briefly reunites with Mia before she's taken away for like the third time, and you get this pretty good jump scare.
Stay the fuck out!
A decent jump scare that's ruined by really bad lip syncing. It's something this game seems to have a lot of issues with. Very often the character's lips are moving just slightly too slow for the speed of the dialogue, and it can kind of take you out of the immersion sometimes. Turns out the cure needs two parts, a D-series head and a D-series arm. Zoe is the D-series head, Ethan just needs the arm, which is behind this door. To open it, he needs another lantern which Marguerite has. Next, we get her boss fight.
Don't you worry none!
I like this fight a lot. It just has this really intense nature about it, as this long spider-shaped woman is crawling after you, and I love this design by the way. It's some seriously freaky imagery. A lot of people don't like this boss fight because she's apparently too spongy, which yes, she is kinda spongy, but that's the point. I think the issue people are having is that this is the first boss fight where you need to be prepared. The game doesn't give you anything. Unlike the other boss fights where you barely need any ammo because the game gives you what you need for free, in this fight, what you've been able to scavenge up to this point is all you're gonna have. And so naturally, if you go in with not much ammo, you will find it difficult, and she will feel spongy. Now granted, the game does still give you small item pickups throughout the house, but it won't be enough alone to win the fight. And the boss fight itself has actually got quite a bit of depth. I think you really need to play through it multiple times to truly appreciate it. I mean, Marguerite will crawl on the ceilings, the walls, she'll try hide inside the roof or beneath the floorboards. Sometimes she'll pounce on top of you or will drop down to attack. You may notice about halfway through she'll stop walking towards you with her weak point exposed, and opt to crawl on the floor instead, requiring you to shoot her to make her roll over and expose herself again. She'll sometimes start producing bugs on the walls too, which you will need to stop her from doing by the way, and there's just a lot that can happen. On top of all this, it's actually a pretty challenging boss fight. Getting hit by her whatsoever does masses of damage, especially on Madhouse, so you really have to strategize about your healing, and it all culminates in this being my favourite boss fight in RE7.
Fucking stay dead, okay?
Ethan gets the D-Series arm, and finally now you fully open the map. I love the map setup here. Every location is connected to the trailer in the middle, so it's easy to know where you are, and similar to the Baker house, it flows well. One thing I've never understood about Resident Evil 7 is the dislike for Ethan being a very silent protagonist. It's safe to say that he doesn't talk a lot, but I don't think it's fair to assume that makes him a bad character. If anything, it makes him the most realistic character. This game obviously put a higher emphasis on horror, and most of the best horror games outside of Resident Evil had traditionally silent protagonists, or protagonists that talk very little. By having them not talk much, it allows the player to feel like they're in the character's shoes, and this only really works when the game takes place in first person, which, hey, Resident Evil 7 is the first Resident Evil game to take place in first person. One scene that gets pointed out to in particular is when Ethan kills Mia at the start of the game with the hatchet, and basically just says nothing. He just stands there and looks at her. Now, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but two reactions a person might have to this is they would break down or be in complete shock. Ethan clearly is in complete shock and disbelief as to what he just witnessed, which was definitely the smart route to go down. Because one thing this game does so well is it doesn't tell you how to feel. If Ethan had started crying right there, I think it would have taken away from the shock of the moment for both Ethan and the player. Believe it or not, he actually shows more realism than any other character in Resident Evil. When real people are put in situations like these, it's a lot different. Now, don't get me wrong, I like when characters are more vocal too. Take Resident Evil 4. If Leon was as silent in that game as Ethan is in RE7, it would make RE4 a lot worse, because in RE4 you aren't really supposed to be immersed in the environment. It obviously makes little sense, and the game's focus is being fun. And that objective is reflected in Leon's character being a wisecracking wise guy. Same way RE7's objective of being scary is reflected in Ethan not talking much. And while I do understand that he might not be for some, I think it was necessary to really capitalize on the scariness. The attention to detail is really good in Resident Evil 7, specifically in some of the pictures. Like this one in the trailer, It's Too Late for Them. It really inspires a lot of intrigue into what this family was like before, and what made them this way, and if they were ever normal. I especially like the kids' room in the Baker house. It's one of the only places that looks like it hasn't been corrupted. It shows remnants of maybe who these people used to be. Ethan arranges to meet up with Zoe at the trailer, when suddenly, there's a change of plans.
Now where the hell are you? You know, never mind. We only need the head, and you've got it. This is gonna help me and me, right?
Hey, buddy. I thought you should know. I decided that Zoe needed a timeout. She and Mia are here with me. And they're keeping each other company.
Turns out Lucas has kidnapped Zoe too, so Ethan needs to go rescue her if he's going to be able to make the cure. And this is, sadly, the final area in the Baker estate. I kinda wish you got to stay here longer, at least before the game drastically shifts course. Lucas is really psychotic. If Jack is the slasher of the family, very much like Jack Torrance from The Shining, and Marguerite is like the body horror from Wreck, then Lucas is definitely the torture horror from Saw. A lot of Lucas's section is just avoiding tripwires, but they aren't always placed in really obvious positions, so it isn't too boring. This is where we introduce to the final enemy in Resident Evil 7, the Fat Molded. There are 4 types of enemies: the regular molded, which I explained before, the strong molded, which are basically just the regular molded but with more health, the spider molded, which crawl on the floor and are actually quite dangerous due to their increased speed and aggression, and lastly the fat molded, probably my least favourite of the bunch. They have the most health of all and spit acidic vomit at you. It's hard to put my finger on it, but there's just something about them that's just so unsatisfying to play against. For one, the vomit spray they emit is really unforgiving. Even if a tip of it hits you, you're taking damage. And it's also really boring just having to dump so much ammo into them. Although one thing this game brings back, which I really love, is weapons that you don't have to get. Let me explain. When you get the crow key, for example, from Marguerite's house, nothing in the game points you towards the crow door in the Baker house that homes the really powerful grenade launcher. It's up to you to remember to go back there to get that weapon, because if you don't, well, then you just won't have the grenade launcher. Same thing with the amazing double barrel shotgun. If you don't use the repair kit on it, then you will never be able to witness the immense power it beholds. This game really awards the more keen-eyed of players, and trust me, having the double-barrel shotgun and grenade launcher against a fat molded will save you a lot of ammo. Next, we get definitely my favorite puzzle in Resident Evil 7. Your objective is to put this lit candle on the cake, which is secretly explosive. But if you try get into the room, water sprinklers from above will cut out the flame, so you need to find a valve handle to stop the water flow. But the valve handle is locked in a room which needs a password. In order to work out the password, you need to take the winding key out of a barrel of gasoline, causing it to drip onto the floor. So when you finally put the candle on the cake, it explodes, and the whole room sets on fire, engulfing you in the flames. Or that's likely what will happen the first time you attempt this puzzle, if you don't watch the videotape of course, because if you do watch the tape, you get to see another victim of Lucas's puzzle. You see that he's rigged it so that it's impossible to win, without cheating of course, because if you see the videotape, you can observe what the password is, and put it in ahead of time, effectively skipping the step of removing the winding key from the gasoline, and going straight to the valve handle, allowing you to actually survive. Another example of the videotapes being used just so well in this game. Ethan gets a D-series head, and you get some pretty intense combat encounters with the molded on the pier, before finally meeting up with Mia and Zoe. She's just able to make 2 serums before there's an interruption.
Hey, one of those is mine.
Zoe! Get your ass back to the house! I will deal with you later!
And thus begins the 4th and final boss fight of the game. Sadly, this is probably my least favorite, but that doesn't mean it's bad, at all, by any means. I'd actually say that it's good, but I don't know. I just liked how up till this point, Resident Evil 7 had strayed away from the pretty much cliched, fleshy monster mutation that every Resident Evil game had, and opted for more unique designs like Marguerite's. And to beat him, you just gotta shoot him in the eyes, because we've never done that in a Resident Evil game before. It really does hammer the point in that Jack just refuses to die. Now there's a lot I like about this fight. All the boss fights have been usually in these tight claustrophobic spaces, and this one keeps up that trend. Don't be fooled by how open this area may look at first glance. Jack takes up about half the room, so you haven't got that much space. It's actually quite an intense fight. Not as intense as the Marguerite fight, granted, but there's no denying that it definitely takes a bit of skill to beat, especially on Madhouse. Ethan's unfortunately forced to use one of the serums on Jack, leaving just one left, and the game actually gives you the decision between curing Mia or Zoe.
It's fine. It was foolish thinking I could escape.
Oh, you're right there, Ted.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who picks Zoe? I mean literally. The whole reason you came here in the first place was to save Mia, your wife. Why instead would you choose to save a woman who you've seen for less than 5 minutes in person? It really just highlights a larger issue with Zoe's character as a whole. She's sort of pointless, because up till this point you've only been communicating with her through phones. So why can't that just be Mia? Combine both characters into one. It would really help develop both Ethan and Mia's characters. This should be a story between a husband and a wife. Zoe is just the strange third component which I don't think fits quite well. Let's just say it's no surprise the game gives you the bad ending if you choose her. Ethan and, hopefully Mia, set sail back home, and if the game had ended right here with a to-be continued ending, I think this would be in contention for a top 3 Resident Evil game of all time. But sadly, it doesn't end. We get the boat section, and while I was willing to defend this game over some things, I just can't when it comes to this section. It's just bad, really bad. Ethan gets kidnapped by the mold thing and you play as Mia. This is where you learn that the entity behind all this is a girl called Evelyn, an Umbrella experiment gone wrong. She's basically just a creepy ghost girl. My biggest issue with this part of the game is that it's just so boring, at least when compared to the greatness of the previous sections. A lot of it feels like you're just running from one scripted dialogue sequence to the next. It feels more reminiscent of the opening sections than anything that came after. And while at least the opening's slow gameplay contributed to make it more scary, the slowness of the boat section just makes it more boring. However, despite this, I do understand why it plays the way it does. The story in the Baker estate is told through little hints, referencing that there's something dark at work. But I imagined the deadline for this game was approaching, and I realized they couldn't continue to tell the story this way, and so instead they just dump it all here. Every suspicion or doubt you may have had about the story is explained. Not much is left up to the imagination, to say the least, which is a shame because I like when there's a mystery, but it's really up to you whether you like loose ends at the end of a story or not. It's just unfortunate, yet understandable, that it comes at the cost of the gameplay. Mia watches a tape with Evelyn because apparently she's just forgotten everything. She hasn't, it's just to explain to the player what happened previously. This tape is a big problem due to its length. If the tape is going to be this long, then it needs to be justified by the narrative. But it isn't. It pretty much just explains what you already know. We get that Evelyn destroyed the ship. You don't need to spell it out. Although it at least shows how Mia got infected in the first place, so that's something. When she passes out. Wait a minute, she passes out on a videotape? How long was she unconscious for, and how the hell do her eyes close here? It's a camera. What is going on? The game does do something here which I really like. It throws you in an unknown location with no weapons and something unknown trying to kill you. But actually it's not unknown, it's the molded. You know, the same molded you've been dealing with for the last 5 hours of gameplay? This is where enemy variety becomes an issue. Having only 4 types of enemies was just passable in the Baker estate, but here's where I draw the line. You fought them to the point where they're no longer scary, now just an obstacle to bypass. Why not introduce one of the scrapped enemy types that didn't make it into the full game? There's a lot of interesting features and characters which were unfortunately cut, most likely due to time restraints. When it comes to things which I actually think are good, I like the atmosphere at the start when you first enter the ship, although it wears on you pretty quick, trust me. I like this jump scare. It actually caught me off guard the first time I saw it. The remote bomb is really fun to use. I like the view outside here. I think the optional areas requiring a corrosive to unlock are quite a neat idea. I like this picture puzzle. I like this really intense bit where you're trying to get the power cable and there's a fat molded coming for you. I love this little scene with Jack, and I'll be talking about this later. I like this pre-rendered cutscene and that you can actually skip it. And I like how in general this section never lets you feel too powerful. Also, I take back what I said about the flamethrower being the worst weapon in the game. The submachine gun takes that spot, because even though the flamethrower's damage is abysmal, you can at least get a lot of ammo for it. The submachine gun is just bad in every way. This thing is a literal pea shooter. I don't think this section utilizes its setting as much or as well as it could. You're on this giant ship and you're basically just indoors the entire time. I often find myself getting lost because everywhere looks the exact same. The map setup is basically just squares and rectangles stacked on top of each other. It's not very creative, but it makes sense for a ship. I just wish there was an area maybe on the deck of the ship or somewhere up high where you can just observe the scale of the area. When you finally reach Ethan, you get a really interesting moment.
Ethan? Hey, shh, I know. I'm not gonna hurt you. Hell, I never would have if I could have helped it.
What do you mean?
I'm no killer, son. Neither is Marguerite, nor my boy Lucas, or even Zoe here. That girl, Evelyn, she did this.
Jack explains that Evelyn is the one who made them crazy like this. All the Baker family got turned into complete psychopaths because of her. And it's quite strange seeing a guy who was trying to kill you for basically the entire game being a normal person. It's a really heartwarming yet sad scene.
She's the key, all right? You find her, and you stop her. Ethan, free my family. Please.
Mia rescues you from the molded, and you are finally finished with the boat. Your next objective? Kill Evelyn. Playing as Ethan again feels nice, and this is where the game finally begins to build back up its momentum. But it almost feels too little too late. This sequence is definitely an improvement on the boat section, there's no denying that. But the boat section isn't exactly the pinnacle of gameplay, and I wouldn't even say What's to Come is the pinnacle of gameplay either. I wouldn't even say it's great, just good, in a RE4 kind of way, where they just throw everything at you and it's really chaotic. On a side note, I really like the way the area looks before you enter the mine. It's a shame that the mine itself is infinitely less interesting looking, but it still looks fine. I do feel the first area of the mine is a bit weird. The rocks are so bright, they kind of look like snow. It feels sort of out of place. But the later areas of the mine do look more what I'd expect. Although one thing I could definitely feel with both the boat and mine section is that they feel kind of rushed. There's nowhere near the same level of care or depth put in here compared to the Baker estate. I feel they may have been running out of time and just have to pump it out as quick as possible. These sections are really linear, but linearity is actually fine if the game gives you an adequate amount of combat encounters to make up for said linearity. And the mine definitely succeeds at this. There are a lot of combat encounters, and they are not only fun, but challenging. Yeah, there isn't too much brain power required, but it does fit for the finale of the game, and it at least is a lot of fun, which is more than what I can say for the previous section. We also get a pretty good encounter with 2 Fat Molded, because the game gives you a lot of cover and maneuverability room. It's good. Ethan conveniently comes across the E necrotoxin so he can make the serum to kill Evelyn, and the mine actually loops back inside the house from the very start. It gives many flashbacks to what happened there, and I really like how it shows Evelyn's influence on Mia.
It's okay. It's okay, it's me. I know you didn't mean to hurt me.
Kill him, Mommy.
But you shouldn't have done that! It fucking hurts!
He doesn't want to be my daddy? Then he can die.
Ethan actually shows Evelyn that he has the necrotoxin, which is a bit weird to me. Like, would you want to keep that hidden from her for as long as possible? But in response to being shown the one thing that can literally kill her, the best you can do is hide up in the attic and emit shockwaves to slow Ethan down. Like, seriously, is this not the same person who was able to absolutely demolish an entire ship full of hundreds of people in like an hour? Just do to Ethan what you did to this guy and call it a day. Or just teleport to the moon or something. Anything but this. Yeah, these plot holes kinda happen when you set up a character to be literally Jesus, but whatever. Ethan injects Evelyn with the necrotoxin and you get the big reveal.
You.
Why does everyone hate me?
Damn you! Damn you all to hell!
Turns out Evelyn was disguising herself as a grandma the whole time, while watching you in the Baker estate. That explains some of the weird moments. You next get the final boss fight. Or I wouldn't even call this a boss fight. It's more of just a test of how much ammo you have. It's alright though. Ethan defeats Evelyn in an awesome moment where he's about to die but some mystery person throws him a gun, which absolutely destroys her, and that's the game. In conclusion, Resident Evil 7 is quite literally the definition of a mixed bag. Some parts make me glow up with how great they are, and others just make me feel sad. This game is great at the start, but just begins to fall apart as it goes on. Its main issues are its very long opening and bloated third act, which weighs the game down so much and kills a lot of its momentum, which it did such a great job building up at the start. The game ends up becoming so focused on creating a great story that it forgets about creating a great game. And while it does kind of improve at the end, it's just too late, honestly. Now, however, when Resident Evil 7 is firing on all cylinders, it's really great. Basically, from the first Jack boss fight up till the last, the game knocks it out of the park in every way. I just wish we got more of that. Despite its flaws, Resident Evil 7 is a really, really good game that planted the seeds for future Resident Evil games to grow from. And finally, I love the ending cutscene. It's the first time you hear Ethan talk for an extended period of time, and it hits way more because of it, perfectly summing up the greatness of Resident Evil 7.
Hey. They say that when one door closes, another opens. Well, a door closed tonight. And what a long night it was. But not just for me. Me and I weren't the only victims here. So were the Bakers. It was that thing, Evelyn, who made them that way. But now Evelyn's dead. And these guys are here to clean up the mess. I had just come to terms with losing Mia. But now she's back and wants to start over. Put all this behind us. Maybe this is where the next door opens.